Humanity is facing one of its quietest yet most dangerous crises in modern history. Birth rates are collapsing across the world, not just in rich countries, but in the overwhelming majority of nations on Earth. As of 2026, 136 countries now sit below the replacement level needed to keep their populations stable, up from just 4 countries back in 1950. By 2050, many nations will have fewer people living in them than they do today. This isn't a temporary blip. This is the Great Global Fertility Collapse, a demographic shift that will reshape economies, societies, cultures, and the balance of global power for the rest of this century, and almost nobody feels prepared for what comes next. The numbers here are genuinely staggering. South Korea, Italy, Spain, Japan, and China all sit well below the replacement rate of 2.1 children per woman, and even countries once famous for high birth rates are seeing dramatic declines. India, the most populous country on Earth with 1.46 billion people, now has a fertility rate of just 1.9 children per woman, officially below replacement level for the first time, according to a 2026 UN Population Fund report. Brazil and Mexico are following similar downward trajectories. The global fertility rate has fallen from roughly 5 children per woman in 1960 to about 2.2 today, and UN projections now expect it to cross below the replacement threshold of 2.1 globally by the late 2030s, the first time that's ever happened in recorded human history. This is unfolding faster than any previous demographic shift humanity has ever experienced. The causes behind this are complex and deeply interconnected. Rising costs of living, especially housing and education, make having children a genuine financial struggle for huge numbers of young people. Changing social values, shifting career priorities, and later marriage all play a role. Women's expanded access to education and the workforce, which is unambiguously a positive development, has also naturally contributed to lower birth rates as women gain more control over the timing and number of children they have. In many countries, the sheer cost of childcare and the near-total absence of family support systems make parenthood feel almost unaffordable, even for people who genuinely want children. And here's a nuance that most coverage of this topic completely misses. This isn't simply a story about people deciding en masse that they don't want kids. That same 2026 UN Population Fund report, based on a survey of 14,000 adults across 14 countries representing over a third of the world's population, found something more complicated. 1 in 5 women in India, for example, reported having more children than they'd actually intended, largely due to community and family expectations. At the same time, huge numbers of people elsewhere report wanting more children than they can actually afford to have. In other words, this isn't purely a story of the world stopped wanting children. It's just as much a story about people, in both directions, not having the actual reproductive choice they say they want. Some pressured into having more, others financially blocked from having as many as they'd like. The economic consequences of this shift will be massive. Shrinking populations mean smaller workforces, slower economic growth, and enormous strain on pension and healthcare systems that were built for a very different demographic pyramid. Japan and Italy are already living through this, struggling with aging populations and worsening labor shortages that are only going to intensify. China's decades under the one-child policy left it with a demographic time bomb that's now detonating in real time, with its working-age population shrinking by millions every year, even as its elderly population grows at a pace the country has never had to manage before. The military implications here are significant too. Nations with fewer young people will field smaller armies and lean more heavily on technology and immigration to maintain any credible defense capability. This could genuinely shift the global balance of power, with countries that retain younger populations gaining relative strategic strength simply by virtue of having more people available to work, innovate, and, if it comes to it, serve. The social and cultural impacts are just as profound. Societies with fewer children will look and feel fundamentally different day to day. Schools are already closing in parts of rural Japan and South Korea. Cities are shrinking, and the overall pace of innovation may slow as the pool of young, creative minds that historically drives new ideas and new industries gets smaller relative to the population as a whole. The psychological toll on societies with a huge elderly population and comparatively few young people is only just beginning to be understood, from the isolation experienced by elderly residents in emptying towns to the pressure placed on a shrinking working-age population expected to support them. The global fertility collapse forces us to confront some genuinely difficult questions about modern life. Why are people across so many different countries and cultures ending up with fewer children, or none at all? Is this fundamentally a sign of progress? More choice, more autonomy, more control over one's own life? or a warning sign of deeper structural problems in how modern societies are organized? And how do we build conditions where people who do want children actually feel they can afford to have and raise them? Some countries have tried financial incentives, expanded family leave policies, and more open immigration to soften the impact, but results so far have been limited almost everywhere they've been tried. South Korea's own recent fertility uptick, a genuinely surprising rise after hitting a record low of 0.72 in 2023, shows that policy can move the needle at least modestly. But even South Korea's improved rate of roughly 0.82 to 0.85 remains far below replacement level and among the lowest in the world. That's the sobering pattern almost everywhere. Policy can bend the curve slightly, but nothing tried anywhere so far has come close to reversing it entirely. The Great Global Fertility Collapse is one of the most important long-term trends shaping our world right now, and its effects will be felt for generations, well beyond the lifetimes of most people watching this video. Whether humanity finds a way to adapt to this shift or eventually reverses it will help determine the shape of civilization for the rest of the century. What do you think? Is this ultimately a sign that humanity has finally gained real reproductive freedom, or a warning that modern life has made raising a family unsustainable for too many people? Let me know in the comments, and if this gave you a deeper understanding of a crisis moving quietly beneath the headlines, subscribe, because this story is only going to become more important from here.